Appraisers, where is your time being spent? Are you putting people on the scales and taking their blood pressure, or are you focused on valuation?
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
I got called out recently from my appraisal peers on, per hour. We were talking about price per hour or fees per hour or your salary per hour, and indicated something about making over $100 an hour. Got called out on that, and basically was told that is absolutely impossible as an appraiser. No, it's not. Stay tuned. I'll tell you why. Thank you for joining me for this mini-sode. I want to pause and remind you that we are sponsored by ANOW Software. ANOW, of course, is the software that I use to basically do everything that I need to do in my appraisal office. And I'll tell you an experience I had recently with ANOW coming up. But right now you could go to anow.com/coach, anow.com/coach. Folks, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty because that's not a place, or a mini-sode rather, is not the place to do that. But I do want to teach a principle today. And it all started with a class that I was teaching recently where I talked about appraisers and what they are making per hour. And we were talking a little bit about the fact that you can go to salary.com, or you can go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or you can go to some of these other sites and find out what the average appraiser is making. And I made the comment that that was way low for what I've calculated in my own business. And by the way, I should just tell you, I am a bit of a numbers nerd, not in general, but when it comes to my business, I found that in order for me to be successful, I have to have the whole picture. Just as I need to know what's going on in the marketplace in order to be a good appraiser, in order to be a good business owner, I have to know what's going on in my own business, and I have to know what the numbers are. And one of the great things about ANOW software is it allows me to be able to do that at the touch of a button. Well, that is if you know your password. We recently had to let a key employee go, and whenever I do that, I always change the passwords, and I lost the password. And I'll tell you what, I was at a loss when it comes to ANOW software. I realized just how much I rely on this software. I use it on my phone. I use it on my desktop. I use this on my laptop. I use it all the time, and it happened to be, a weekend where we had an extended weekend with a holiday, and we were kind of closed, if you know what that means, appraisers. The office officially was closed, but of course I was working on my business, and I'll tell you, I was a bit stuck without the password. Couldn't really get a hold of anybody because they were all off playing, and it made me realize how grateful I am for ANOW software. Folks, you will be too. If you are not using it, holy moly, are you missing out? You need to check it out. Go to anow.com/coach. And if you try them out, you will get 3 free months of the All-Star team at the Appraiser Coach, and check that out as well. So anow.com/coach is the address. One more time. It's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, we're back. We're talking today about per hour, and specifically, we're actually talking about systems. I'm just trying to set it up here because I was recently teaching a class, and I kind of got called out by other appraisers and basically said that I was full of, this is a family-friendly show. I was full of crap when I talked about making over $100 an hour. Folks, I do. In fact, I'm being a bit conservative. I make over $100 an hour and probably more than that when I'm doing appraisal work, and I understand where people are coming from. When you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or you go to salary.com, or I think the other one's called payscale.com or something like that, and you look up what the average appraiser makes, It's nowhere near $100 an hour. It's probably more around 20, 25 an hour. And that's what I used to make. That's what I was making for many, many years because I did things basically the way that all my peers and mentors and my colleagues were doing. And then I found out about some principles that really changed my life. I call them the principles of prosperity. And I found them not by studying other appraisers, but by studying other successful people in other businesses, individuals who had written books, individuals who had, invented the wheel. So I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. These are principles that work whether you're in an appraisal office or you're working somewhere else. And I tweaked them and I played with them and I molded them and shaped them in order to work in my own business. I wanted to utilize principles of success that would allow me to do more with less. And some of these principles are not difficult, but to retrofit them into an appraisal office sometimes can be. Again, not the time and the place to go into details. We do go into details in my all-star team. We go into a lot of details in my Appraiser Academy. That system where we meet online once a month. But I just want to teach from a 5,000-foot level today, just on a macro level, kind of share a principle with you. And it has to do with systems. It has to do with recognizing what tier level work is in your appraisal office. And by tier level work, you've heard me talk about it here before, kind of tribal language, but I've kind of branded it as tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and now there's a tier 4 and 5, but that's not really what we're talking about today. With regard to the appraisal process, if you will, from start to finish, there is a tier 1, which is basic level data entry, receptionist work, and then you've got the level 2, which is a little bit more in depth, and then level 3 is valuation. Folks, where are you? As an appraiser, as a licensed appraiser, as an individual who cares about valuation, where are you regarding your expertise and your time? Where are you spending your time? Folks, if you're spending a lot of time in tier 1, tier 2, my guess is you probably are making about $20, $25 an hour, and that's okay. I did that for many years. There's nothing wrong with doing things that way. There's a lot of appraisers that subscribe to the idea that if you want something done right, even if it's entry level, that you need to do it yourself. Now, that works for a lot of appraisers. I can tell you it didn't work long term for me. I was tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I was tired of the stress that was involved, the time that was involved and needed to be put in on each and every one of these appraisals. And I, in my opinion, came up with a better idea, a better system. And it's worked for many years. Sure, I've had to tweak it over the years. There's changes I've had to make to it. But the principle is still the same, and that is spend your time in your expertise. Appraisers, look at yourself as professionals and spend your time in the areas that you can be most useful. I had a mentor once that used to say Frank Sinatra doesn't move pianos. Now let that sink in for just a little bit. What does that principle mean to you? You know, last time you went to the doctor, did the doctor take your blood? Did he do your blood pressure and put you on the scales? Did he check you in? Did he send you the bill? The doctor spends time in his expertise, and that's diagnosing the issue that you might be having. Appraisers, what is our job? Is our job data entry? Is our job answering the phones? Is our job accounts receivable? Maybe in your office, maybe that's the way you've set things up. And again, that's okay if that's the way you want to do things. But I can tell you that it didn't work for me long term. I changed the way I did things, and it has revolutionized the way that I run my business. And one of the things that it's done is increased my pay per hour dramatically. I'm able to take on more volume, focus on what really matters to value, comp selection, adjustments, reconciliation, support for those adjustments. That's really where value is derived. It's not in data entry. It's not in answering the phones. It's not in bid requests. It's not in accounts receivable. Again, if that works for you, kudos and continue to do what you're doing. It didn't work for me. I felt like it was more important for me to focus my time and attention on valuation. And that's what I've done. Now, has that decreased the man hours that it takes to complete an appraisal? Well, yes and no. I mean, there's certain systems and certain efficiencies, mostly regarding technology. For example, Now Software, a sponsor of this program, helps me to do things faster, right? Alamode, another sponsor of this program, helps me to do things faster. Datamaster helps me to do things faster. OREP Insurance, just the speed at which they're able to get my application through and shopped around, it helps me to focus on my appraisal business. All these things help, right? But as far as man hours, yeah, maybe the typical appraiser is somewhere between 5 to 7 hours per appraisal, right? And maybe you're doing all of that yourself. And again, that's okay if that's the way you want to do it. I would say my average appraisal time start to finish is 4 to 6 hours. I would say I know that to be true. Again, I'm a numbers guy. I crunch the numbers and I do it quite often. Okay. The average is 5 hours for me. Start to finish. That's from receiving to delivery. Now, do I spend 5 hours personally on every appraisal? The answer is no. I use the law of delegation. I use technology. I use systems. I use quality control. I use auditing. I use these systems that allow me to still produce a very high quality report, but be able to be the doctor in the room for 5 minutes rather than the nurse and the receptionist and the billing officer. In other words, I do things a little bit different than my colleagues do, and it's allowed me. I'm sorry, individual who called me out and said there's no way I'm making over $100 an hour. I'm telling you, I do, and that's okay. Everybody does things differently. You've got to find out what works best for you. I am absolutely 100% convinced that you as an appraiser can spend less time per hour per report, and the quality, please listen, stay with me, the quality of your report will actually increase. Yeah, you heard me right. There are systems you can put in place where the quality of let me put it this way, okay, using the analogy that we've used already. Do you think that the doctor would be as quality a doctor if he was the individual taking your blood, weighing you, taking your blood pressure, checking you in, setting up your appointment, doing the accounts receivable, checking out at the end, taking your insurance card, copying it, all the stuff that happens at a doctor's office, right? Nobody, I'm sorry, patients don't complain that the doctor didn't meet them at the door. Patients usually don't complain that the doctor was in the room for 15 minutes when they were really at the doctor's office for an hour, hour and a half. Now, some might, I don't know, but the bottom line is the doctor's a better doctor because the doctor comes in at the most opportune time, and all of the prelim work is done. I'm sorry, it just would not seem very professional if the doctor was the one that met you behind the desk and had you fill out all the paperwork and was the one that you called to set up the appointment. And there's nothing wrong with the individual that takes your blood and weighs you and takes your blood pressure. Don't get me wrong, but that's not a doctor's job. Appraisers, where is your time being spent? Are you putting people on the scales and taking their blood pressure, or are you focused on valuation and the most important part of the appraisal process? I hope that you will figure out some systems that allow you to be able to make a very good living, keep the quality of your reports up at the same time, and be able to have a lifestyle that you should enjoy because you are a professional. You are a professional, and I think the systems can be put in place for you to act as a professional and to focus truly on the most important parts of valuation. I mentioned the Appraiser Academy. I hope you will join us. We have a great group of appraisers across the country who every single month for about 2 hours, we get together and we go over some principles of prosperity. We go over some systems that you can employ in your business to allow you to do more with less. And we take your questions as well. And when I say we, it's not just me. It's appraisers across the country answering your questions about specific things that you can do in your office to truly increase your net worth. Hope you'll join us. Go to theappraisercoach.com, click on memberships to learn more. Thank you for joining me today. We'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.